Hey everyone, welcome to the latest installment of MSP Business School. I'm Brian Doyle, and with me as always are my two multi-talented co-hosts, Rob Rogers and Tim McNeil. What's shaking, boys?
How you doing?
Living the dream, my friend.
Yeah.
And what is that dream, Rob? You say that every week, and I'm just wondering, where's the dream end and the nightmare start?
I'm trying to be positive right now, Brian. I'm trying to keep it positive. It's been one of those weeks.
Well, I always like to say nobody's here to hear about us and what we're our tales of woe. They're really here for our guest. And we want to welcome today Kipp Stumpf from IT Nation, part of ConnectWise. And he's going to tell us a little bit about, Evolve. And, for those that are not part of a peer group today, you hear it all the time on our episodes, how some of the great MSPs that we speak to, the game changer was when they got involved with a peer group or a business coach. And Kipp's going to share with us a little bit about, what Evolve's all about and, what steps you can take if you're not in a peer group today to really get to that point where, you can jump in and really hit the ground running. So Kipp, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So Kipp, let's kick things off. We always like to talk about how people ended up in this industry. Most of us didn't come out of college saying, I want to be an MSP. So, I'd love to hear a little bit about your backstory and how you ultimately ended up with ConnectWise.
Yeah, I was the accounting finance guy. That's what I went to school with. I like the math problems. I like the planning. I really went into financial planning. So I was a junior financial planner right out of school, putting together estate planning, everything from, it was really wealth management, right? It was the whole picture, which I liked to do. And I worked for another guy. I was actually in the Washington, D.C. area, right outside of there. Did that for 3 years. And it got to the point where, I want to start to make some more money. And, in that line of work, it's really kind of building your own book of business. And I am not a salesperson. That's why I'm good friends with Rob and Tim here. I'm the type of person that shut me in a closet, let me work on something, let me get something done. I'll crunch the numbers and I'll kind of move forward with it. So when I realized, that wasn't the next step, obviously the IT industry was booming. So I actually moved down to Florida. My family was down in Florida, went to get my MBA. I got my MBA in finance and MIS. So I had a little bit of the technical and the finance background of that. And at that time, I kind of found ConnectWise. So I was getting my MBA at night from 6 to 10 p.m. And then for anyone who are ConnectWise users or managed users, I was the first overnight help desk support technician that worked from 10 p.m. till 8 a.m. So that was the fun days because that's when our cloud would go down every other week. And also when we didn't have 24/7 engineer support. So I would get to talk to people. I'm like, yeah, I just got to wait till 8 a.m. when our US people are up and ready to go. So
they'll reboot that server. We'll be back in business.
Yeah, I'm sure that went over great.
Yeah, so those are definitely the pain points. But honestly, back then it was under 300 people. Arnie Bellini got a relationship guy. I got to know him. He knew once I finished my MBA, he wanted me to go into the consulting side of the business and doing implementations. And I really did that for 8 years. Funny enough, Rob and Tim were one of my implementation partners that I did a while back. During my time there, I've done over 1,000 implementations, really got to know, the MSP industry, went through a lot of companies that were going from break fix to managed services. How do I make that transition? How do I get out of it? And then I got into the project management side of things. So got my PMP, was doing project management side of things. And then the past 2 years, I've been with ConnectWise almost 12 years now. The past 2 years, I've come over to the Evolve side of the house. So to wrap it up, we acquired HTG. We acquired HTG. Brad Scow, he was leading up the consulting division. He was a part of HTG. At first I was like, man, we bring this company in now. I have a new boss. Who is this guy? But very intellectual guy, learned a lot about him. And when he moved back over to the Evolve side, he said, when I get opening, I want you to come over there. And I started doing some program management over on the Nation side. So I know it's a long background, but like you said, it definitely didn't start in the IT industry, but that's how I ended up here.
No, I mean, that's really what we love to showcase here too, is most of us kind of found our way into technology, especially, with the timing of where technology really, started booming, right? From a lot of different walks of life. And, it's always interesting to see the backstories on folks, especially, when there's a transition too, because I'm sure you don't use a whole lot of those accounting skills every day anymore, but
Yeah.
it's not a bad thing to talk about because, as we've seen, and I think Rob and Tim, you guys will echo this too, one of the biggest challenges we hear from business owners is I was never prepared to run a business. I don't really understand that part of the equation. And I'm sure that'll kind of lead us into, the discussion now around Evolve and what can Evolve do for an MSP?
Yeah, I mean, just as you said, we kind of term it, and it's not meant in a derogatory way, but it's an accidental entrepreneur, right? They were good at IT services. They started doing it, right? People started calling us like, hey, I'll make a business out of this. I'll go through it. But then to your point, it's like, what service gross margin? What's a good service gross margin? Like how much do I take out of the business paying myself, or how much do I need to reinvest the business, and what's that good growth? So, that is where that kind of weird mixture in my background has been beneficial. Especially with our close relationship with service leadership, which is all about numbers and managing by the numbers. And, we always say, make those data driven decisions, right? You don't want to do it by the muscle and feel in the gut. But yeah, Brian, to your point, Evolve is kind of that. I'm looking for guidance on where do I make my next strategic move, right? A lot of people understand the technical side of stuff. How do I do it? But, how do I grow my service team? And when's the right time to grow my service team, right? When do I move on from owner-led sales? And when can I actually build out my sales team versus me having to close all the deals? I'm sure a lot of the listeners are, owners who have 6 different hats that they do in a daily business. Yeah, and it's so much, the big question is, are you working in your business or are you working on your business? And how do you make that transition, right? And a big part of Evolve is planning, right? So again, I kind of tie this back to what I was doing with my wealth management planning. Are you planning your exit? Are you planning your legacy, right? So many people, yes, you understand that you're focusing on your business, but I think what's unique about Evolve and what I really like with the culture is it ties the personal and the business together, right? Because we see so often where your personal life goes, your business is going to go, right? And you have to have that balance of what goes through there. And I think it's, with the last couple of years that we went through, it's even more true than ever, and people are seeing that businesses are seeing that.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. So we've got a business coach, right? I think we hit some of the buzzwords that are very popular within the MSP community. We're in a peer group. We've got a business coach, and one of the things that Rob and I have learned over the years is, look, everybody's got an exit, whether they want it or not. So you might as well be prepared for it, right? So I think one thing that I just know, going back from the HTG days and going into now the Evolve days, I think you all are above average with helping companies with that exit strategy. So I don't know if there's any more that you can go into that on how you help companies, because that's a huge topic and conversation that Rob and I have, and Brian too, with a lot of MSPs.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. What we kind of point out when we have this jumpstart program, and that's how we kind of introduce people into Evolve and the culture and everything else. And Tim, to your point, we say there's 2 ways to leave in a legacy: accidental or intentional. Which one do you want to be, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be one either way. Are you going to plan for it, or is it going to be accidental? That kind of goes through there. So, Evolve, when you look at, there's multiple different Evolve programs, but the flagship, the owners program is really built around 4 plans, right? Mm-hmm. It's your personal and business legacy plan, right? Mm-hmm. It's your business plan, which you have as your strategy, and then it's your life plan as well, right? So your life plan, you look at that as like, what's your 1-year goals? What are you looking for you? It's kind of that short-term 1-year goal. And then your personal legacy is with the end in mind, and the thing that we see now, it's like when you have someone who's, 5-10 years from their exit, it's easy for them to picture that. But we have a lot of young owners who are like, I'm trying to figure out when I want to build a family, or when I want to buy my next home, or where am I going to locate? And it's hard for them to vision that end in mind. So it's made, and that might be a 5 to 10 year outlook rather than, you don't want to think of the morbid, oh, what happens when I die? But we all have those personal stories, that heart attacks, personal accidents, right? Mm-hmm. And now is the time to plan as far as what goes through there so that your family's set up correctly. We have Evolve stories where, they the husband didn't have the assets in the wife's name, and she lost the company, because it wasn't the right planning of what goes through there. So, but then you have the business side of it as well, right? And the business side of it is the same thing. It's, there's this new thing that evolves, kind of pushing out there in this language or framework that they're looking to do, and it's called the modes theory. And it's
Yes.
what business mode are you in? Are you startup mode, right? Are you a value builder, where you're just trying to build value into your company? Or are you a balance builder, right? When you're a balance builder, you're gonna say, hey, I got 20 companies. I'm making what I need to make. I'm not looking to grow this thing. I want to be able to take vacations. I want to be able to pay my employees well. And I just want those 20 A-list clients and sit there. Or you have what we're all seeing in the past couple of years, these empire builders that are just gobbling up M&As wherever they can.
Wherever, yep.
We're seeing nationwide MSPs pop up that are kind of going through there,
More and more.
and setting that up. So it's that, it's that forward thinking that during the day-to-day you don't think about, but these quarterly meetings and these accountability groups and these peers kind of force you to do it. And the last thing I'll say on that is it's that accountability. Again, I'll use Rob and Tim. You guys have been together for a long time, and you guys have this open communication that goes through there. But sometimes with these MSPs, when you have these owners, they don't have those people in that company that will call them out, right? Or hold them accountable, because everyone's afraid to, right? Because of the discrepancy of where they sit in the org chart. Whereas when you're in a group with other companies that aren't competitors, right? Because of like the geo space of where they are, and you're seeing they're doing X in service gross margin or EBITDA, you're kind of like, I don't want to be at the bottom of this leaderboard. Like, how do I compare myself, or how do I do that same thing? So it's a really good atmosphere, it's just something that's different, I think.
Yeah, Tim has no problem calling me out. He thrives on it. It's like he wakes up in the morning on how he can do it that day at least 3 times.
It could
So
be the best
he's
part
got
of my
that
day.
part on lockdown.
It probably is the best part of my day.
Well, I mean, he's reached out to me to see if you've screwed up anything in my purview, just so he can make sure he can leverage it. So,
Yeah.
Fair.
Kipp, I kind of want to go back to this because I haven't, I talked to a lot of different peer groups, and there's a good solid handful out of good peer groups out there, but I haven't heard anybody take a solid proactive focus on the lifestyle side of the peer group. It's usually numbers focused, NOI, how to do everything, how to be accountable for each other. But can you just go a little bit deeper into the lifestyle, and what do you guys really do? What does that really mean, for that?
Yeah. So, you may be familiar with the Sorensens, right? They're very popular in the IT industry space. Lori Sorensen, she actually wrote a book, Planning for Success. She has a master's in all this stuff, teaches all these items that kind of goes through there. But, we bring the personal into every single meeting. When we actually start a quarterly meeting, we do a check-in, and each member has to go ahead and give what's their work score, what's their life score, and what's their current emotion. Right. So 1 to 5, what's going on? We do that for a couple of things, right? If I go ahead and I say my life is a 2 and my current emotion is stressed, right? You will hopefully see in the meeting, or know that you need to either pull that out or dig into that a little bit, right? It kind of sets the tone instead of you trying to just read people's minds and see what's going on.
Yeah.
To understand that a little bit more. So that's just in a meeting perspective. But then again, to your point, I'll bring the life plan, for example. Like, what are you doing on that daily basis? I'll go back for a second. We actually have surveys or assessments that we send out quarterly, and everyone's favorite is the spouse family assessment, right? So you have to go ahead and send it, and it has questions on there. Do they bring work home? Are they looking at their phone during dinner? Are they making time for date night? Are they making those other items that go in there? I'll tell you from personal experience, before I moved to this role, I was managing 18 people underneath me on the onboarding project management side of things. It spanned from UK, Manila, Australia, and US employees, a lot of entry-level employees. And I was always a person that I didn't want to leave someone hanging, right? So I would literally be on my phone sometimes from 4 a.m. till 12 p.m., and not just sitting there, but, we all have Teams on our phones and everything else, and emails coming in, and you don't want to lose a day with the time zone and stuff like that. And I realized that was stressing me out to the point where if my kid did something so minuscule, I would rip them a new one. And it wasn't his fault, right? It's something minor, but like, I brought that home because of what was going on with work, right? It directly relates what's going on with the personal side of things. So understanding and making intentional, whatever, hey, from 5 to 6:30 when I'm home, there's no work, right? This is the downtime and what goes on there. And, you know, same thing for me, like I want to be involved in my kids' sports, right? So, you know, ConnectWise is great enough. I normally shut down around 4:45 each day, but sometimes I can come back on at 7:30 if I need to catch up. But,
Yeah.
you know, they know that, look, I'm involved in this, and that's what keeps me balanced and what goes through there. So that's where the life plan comes into play, right? One of my thing is I want to be a part of my community and my kids in the sports that kind of goes forward. And that's the stuff that people start to think about of what goes on there. But you know, again, not to go too deep into it, but you know, we give templates with all these items, and it goes to the part, Rob, where even not only is it like you make a personal statement for yourself of what are those action items that you're going to do by the end of the year, and what are you going to work on, and what are the steps for you to take that. You know, we call it an AIP. It's the action initiative plan of what you're going to do there. But for people who want to take it to the next steps, we have what you need to do from a tax perspective. What do you need to do from a legal perspective? What do you need to do from a trust and wills perspective? So it's actually, you know, this guidance of what do you check this off to get yourself prepared and get yourself, you know, in the right spot. Again, you know, I came from that background. You know, I don't want to say I was the only person, but, you know, I'm older than this now, but, you know, I was probably the only 30-year-old with life insurance, 529s for my unborn kids, you know, life insurance.
Financial
you know,
planner lives, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, all that stuff.
So you at
checked
your
off.
core.
But other people don't think about it, right? They just don't need it, or they don't go through there. So
Well,
you know, that's a lot what we talked about.
I definitely want to stop in here because I think you're addressing a critical component that I think was long overlooked in our industry. And it really, you know, I hate to use the term work-life balance, but it really comes down to that. This is an easy burnout industry. It happens so often, and you're also hit over the head that if you're a business owner, you got to be pushing to get better. And I think people have gotten really wise over the last 4 or 5 years that mental health, you know, taking care of your mental health is a critical component to the success of your business, the success of your relationships. And it's great to hear that the peer group is kind of bringing that personal side into the conversation, because quite frankly, if that's out of whack, it doesn't matter what you're doing on the business side, because there's ultimately going to be a challenge there. And as you're talking about life planning, you don't want 50% of your company to go with it.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
So that, you know, kudos to getting that inside the lead groups, because I think it's an area that people are often, unless they're in a group setting, knowing others are feeling the same way, are not off. You know, generally you're not big about talking about, right?
And like, and with the generational gap there as well, you know, I mean, so it's both pieces. One, it's the high driver type of personality usually, right? And then it's kind of, you know, closed. You're just kind of taught to be closed and just push forward, and bringing that out is really smart.
Yeah,
You know?
I really like the, I actually took a note after you said it, the work score, life score, and emotion. You know, Rob and we've subscribed to EOS over the last, I guess, 2.5 or probably 3.5 years at this point. I really like that as an intro. I think I may adopt that for our weekly level 10s.
Yeah, well, it's part of it too. You know, we're getting so used to this screen relationships, you know, that goes through there, and it's hard to create those bonds. And when we're talking about those groups, if you want to get to the point where you can call someone out, you have to bring that relationship side into it, right?
Yeah.
And it's not until you kind of share some of those persons, you get to know those person, you know their triggers, you know those items. Excuse me. You know, there's other tools that we bring into the programs as well, so that you understand people. You know, one thing I'll throw out there is MAD personalities. I don't know if you all have ever heard it. It's called Making a Difference. It's like a Myers-Briggs or a DISC score, but they kind of simplify it to an animal, right? Are you a monkey, a camel, a lion,
Okay,
you know, or a
those,
turtle? And, you know, keep it quick. You know, a turtle is someone who's shy, introverted, kept to themselves. You know, a lion is a leading lion, right? They're just charging, they're going forward. A camel is a detailed, dot the I's, cross the T's. And a monkey is, no offense, Rob and Tim, you're salespeople, right? They like to have a good time.
We're sales monkeys now.
It's the way. Always goes downhill, doesn't it?
But when you know that information, you know, if you have a turtle, you understand when you're in the peer group, you may have to pry a little bit, right? They're not just going to be offering stuff up. And that's where, you know, we try to train our facilitators is sometimes you got to tame the lion, because you don't want that one person overpowering the room and going through those items. So again, it's just another small component, understanding the room, understanding the relationships, understanding how to interact with people, because everyone's different. You know, anyone who's managing people, there's not one management style for your team. You got to adapt
100%.
based on the person and how to go through there. So all tools that we use.
Awesome.
Very cool.
So, another thing I kind of want to talk about, Kipp, is, really those MSPs that have not yet jumped into a peer group. What are some of the steps that they can take on the evolution to, I can't believe I just made a pun, right? Evolution to joining Evolve. But, we see it all the time. It's that MSP owner that knows he needs some direction, but isn't ready to maybe bite off monetarily what's out there. How can they bridge that period from being out there on a ledge by themselves to getting into a group where there's really a team of people helping them move forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, time and money, right? Those are the two barriers normally when people are going in, especially for these smaller companies where people are wearing multiple hats. I can't take 3 days away from my business to go ahead and go to this peer group meeting, right? To get these feedbacks, get what's set up. There's a couple things I'll mention. One, the easiest entry where it may not necessarily be a peer group is we have what's called IT Nation Share, and they're more of localized user groups. They happen in Q1 and Q3, and they're an area near you. They're all over. And what they are is they're, for lack of a better term, a mini IT Nation, right? We have breakout sessions that do product development. We have thought leadership sessions, which just talk about like business strategy and planning and currently what's going on in the industry. We obviously give an update of what's going on with ConnectWise in general, just to keep people dialed in. But we know it from people that see, and we do our surveys, especially for our big events. The number one reason why people come to our events is networking. A lot of times it's not the content, it's not the stuff that's going on. They love seeing the keynote and other items, but people want to be able to talk to other people, get their perspective and see what's going on. And a lot of people will make these networking events and sometimes just create their own monthly virtual call, right? And go up there, right? It doesn't have the injection of the tools and everything else, but sometimes just having a sounding board of people that are in the same situation that you are, you start with the networking, you start with those free events, and then that can turn into something. But the other side of things I'll say is, as I mentioned, we have owner peer groups, but then we have like role-based peer groups, which we can talk about in a little bit. But from an owner's perspective, we do kind of have a graduation program. So if you're someone that doesn't have the ability to invest travel once a quarter, 3 days out of the office, our Evolve One program is that entry-level program. It is
Evolve One.
Yep,
as in the number one.
Correct. Yep. So we have Evolve 1, 2, and 3. Evolve 1 is 100% virtual. It's monthly calls with accountability. The monthly calls are 90 minutes. They're not all day meetings or anything else like that, but they start to give you the structure of how do you get your chart of accounts in order so that you can report properly, or how can you get to the point where you can start benchmarking to see what's going on. And it's a lot of the conversations that you all are probably talking about on your podcast, just basic business understanding. It doesn't get into the level of the planning and stuff, a lot of the stuff that I've been talking about, right? That's a little bit more time consuming, but it's something to get your feet wet, Brian, to your point. It's not a lot of investment. It can see if you like it. You don't have to travel. And then it's something where normally those are the companies that we see are under $1.5–2 million in revenue.
Got it.
Those are the ones that are Evolve One. By time we see companies, and there's outliers, right? I'm just giving you what we see. By time we see companies hitting about $2 million in revenue, that's when we actually see they have the time, they have the structure, they're looking to grow kind of a little bit quicker. That's when they kind of step to our Evolve 2 program. Our Evolve 2 program is more of a 6-month to a year program, and that's really just to get them introduced to all these plans that I was talking to you about, get them into service leadership so they can do benchmarking. So once they get that foundation set, they're then input into that Evolve 3 program, which is the in-person quarterly, a little bit hardcore, I guess I would say. The accountability is there. And then at that point, there's no end in that, right? There's no graduating from Evolve 3. That's just a continual thing, unless someone exits or sells or merger and acquisition. So there is a little bit of a gradual, you don't need to jump with 2 feet in all the way. If you just want to start out, that Evolve 1 monthly virtual is a good stepping stone.
Interesting. Cool.
All right.
And just real quick, is the share, is that the old regionals from
Yes.
back in the day? Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah, they have like the
That's what I
Monday
assumed, yeah.
Brigade, which is, I think you're the Nor'easters.
We were the Nor'easters.
Yeah,
Yep.
the
Yeah,
Northeast,
Nor'easters,
the Central
Yep.
Mafia is like
That's
Chicago.
right, yep.
Yeah,
and stuff like that.
Chicago, yeah.
So yeah, they're, we try to put it in places where it's, 2-hour drive that you can kind of do. Like you said, we provide dinner the night before, and then all the content it's free to register, and anything else, obviously, if you want to stay over, that cost is on you in the hotel. But other than that, it's just, a way to kind of get out there. And we're seeing a lot of people where, we talked about our events before. IT Nation is Secure and IT Nation Connect are our big ones, right? Down in Orlando and in the June timeframe and November. Those local regional ones, a lot of times they'll send, second level managers or just technicians, right? Who may not get the chance to travel to these larger conferences. Again, it's an easy way to kind of invest in their growth, kind of get them out of the office for the day, interact with other people in the industry, and hopefully gain some knowledge at the same time.
Yeah. I can tell you the MSP that Rob and I used to work at, that's exactly what they did, and probably still do. But yeah, that more the mid-level managers or service manager, there was a whole group of them that would go to the Nor'easter. So,
Yeah, the content was always good.
Yeah.
It was always good. It always had,
we actually used to use it as an incentive, if those who top perform in their roles and get recommended by managers get to go, and that's how some of the technicians would get exposure and things like that.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. And it was a great way to get them out of the office for a day. They would come back with some new skill that they wanted to dig in with, that was probably perfect for them too, to dig into, not our management necessarily. And they loved it. Those regional ones were the best for that kind of stuff.
I got a quick question. We're coming up to our end of our time here, but I do have one question. So you have an MSP that wants to join, but they may not want to join your main group. Maybe they just want to join operations, or they just want to join service or sales. They just want to join the sales group. Do they have to join the main plus the others, or like, how does that part work?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We obviously make the groups aligned. So we have peer groups now, it's great opportunity because people keep on wanting them and they keep on expanding, right? Or trying to keep up with the requests. But as you said, we have the owners, and then we have a service executives. Our service executives goes really anyone from a first level manager who may have been a level 3 technician. This is their first time managing people, understanding the HR side of things, all the way up to a COO, right? Who actually owns like the finance portion of the service or the operations side of things, is doing strategy, are in those L10 meetings, or implementing EOS and goes through there. So we call that our service executive peer group. And then we have a sales peer group. Our sales peer group is really intended for people who are focusing on sales, right? It's not, obviously we get some of them who are owners who spend part of their time on sales, but hopefully it's a dedicated salesperson who's understanding, how do I grow the sales team, right? How do I make a pipeline? How do I manage that pipeline? How do I communicate with the rest of my team? How do I grow a team? How do I onboard salespeople? What should we be doing? And then we've also just launched a cybersecurity peer group, obviously very important with everything going on. A lot of the companies that we work with, and again, a lot of the companies that are probably entering this, they probably don't have a dedicated CISO, right? But guess what? You have to at least have someone being focused on this, because as we're talking about that life planning, you need to protect your business from that risk side of things too, and that peer group really does focus first on how do we protect our house, so that you can get prepared to then go ahead and talk to your clients about what they need to do to go ahead and get them prepared to move forward. And then we also have a CFO peer group, for the finance side of things, mergers and acquisitions, private equity. So a lot of things, but obviously, after our owners, our service and our sales are our 2 most popular ones that kind of go in there, right? And the thing is one, from an Evolve perspective, right, the companies that we work with, and we actually surveyed them, they are still 60% owner-led sales. Right, they're closing the deals, they're going through their, it's their business, they run that, which is great. But as we were talking about, when people want to get to that exit strategy, if you're not setting up that next level of leadership to go ahead and take that on, you're never going to get out of the business, right? You have to at some point. So, and that's the people that are getting into that and actually building out, what's my marketing strategy, right? It's not just accidental. I think it's something crazy. Rob and Tim, you probably know better than me, but I think like 85% of small businesses get it from referrals, right? The new business from referrals and stuff like that. But people who market well and create that pipeline and execute on that pipeline, are the ones that are most successful and can
Yeah,
grow that.
and it takes about 3 years to start building all that out and make it a solid plan too. So it's
Right.
not just like, you go in there one day and all of a sudden, boom, you have it. Right.
Yeah.
As long as it took you to build out your tech processes, is the same amount of time it's going to take you to build out your sales process. It just takes a while.
Yeah, and that's where these peer groups are really, I think beneficial, especially from a sales perspective. Sometimes it is a team of 1 or 2. And when you get into a peer group, that's now 10 other companies that you get ideas from, you get feedback from, and one, you may not have to reinvent the wheel, right? Especially we set these up so these peer groups, you don't have conflicts, right? So you're not talking to your neighbor and giving away trade secrets and stuff like that. But, if they've executed something properly, a lot of times they're willing to help. Or it may just be a simple, what tools do you use?
Yeah.
Right. To go ahead and get those items out there. So a lot of different, I think benefits that can go in there. But, to wrap it up, Rob, no, you can be just involved in one of these groups. Obviously, some companies are involved in multiple ones of these. We always try to tie them together, right? And do that relationship because, across all our groups, internal communication, flowing down the communication is a struggle with all companies.
Yep.
So we try to force that a little bit as well inside of here.
Oh, very good. All right. Well, Kipp, Tim, Brian, I really appreciate it, you guys coming on today, hanging out with us. For anybody that's looking to get a hold of Kipp, we will be including his LinkedIn profile with the podcast. Also, this episode will be up on mspbusinessschool.com and anywhere that you get your podcast out there. With that, fellas, I appreciate it, and I wish you guys all the best today.
Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for coming
Thanks
on,
for
Kipp.
joining us. Really appreciate it as well.